Hello, good morning, and welcome to Unacademy. India and Pakistan, two nuclear armed powers, are in the middle of a war. Although we can say that we are in the midst of a war, albeit an undeclared war, it is easier for armchair activists to scream war. It's even easier for television anchors sitting inside the AC rooms to advocate for a war. It is even easier for someone like me who is sitting in Bengaluru, relatively safe from the enemy, to scream war. But I can't just stop thinking about the Jawans who are there fighting for all of us. What about their families? What about the people who are living along the line of control or the international border, or who are in the line of sight or this action? Although we can say that we were not the ones who started this war. The war was launched by Pakistan with the Pahalgam attack. We have only retaliated, we have only responded to their aggression. But this is where the ethical and moral dilemma comes into the picture. Should we advocate for a war? Is war a solution? For that, there are no easy answers. We leave it to the security forces, my students as well. And I receive a lot of comments, mails, messages. What about prelims 2025? Will it be postponed? Will the exam be conducted on time as per the schedule? If the situation continues to be the way it is, then in all likelihood, prelims 2025 will be postponed, will get postponed. But what if the situation stabilizes in the next few days and the exam is conducted on time? What if you lose a very precious moment and time in your preparation? Because there is a momentum going by your side, on your side. And what if there is a sudden break in this momentum? It will be very difficult for you to regroup and then restart your preparation. There are lots of what ifs and what nots. I'm here today to give you a suggestion, maybe a selfish one. Please focus on your prelims examination. What if it is conducted on time? I don't want you to lose your precious time because you have already prepared a lot. You have thoroughly prepared. You are in that momentum. Please don't let this momentum break. What if the exam is postponed? Even then, your hard work will not go into waste. You're still preparing, you're still completing your syllabus, you're still taking the mocks, although it becomes very difficult for you to concentrate as well. What if you are living along the border or line of control? What if your relatives are there? What if you deeply care about the Jawans? That is why I tell you it is a selfish recommendation that I'm giving you. As much as possible, switch off your mobile phones, disconnect from the social media, and be focused on what you have set out yourself for, which is to prepare and crack the examination. And let's pray that we come out victorious in this war. Let's get started with the analysis of today's the Hindu newspaper. These are the topics that we shall be discussing today. And let's look at topic number one. India hits back after intercepting Pakistan strikes. We launched Operation Sindoor, and as expected, Pakistan has retaliated as well, but has also escalated the matters. Pakistan has tried to launch missile attacks at various locations, and our defense systems, the brave Jawans, the talented, committed Jawans, they have thwarted all such attempts at Pakistani escalation. But for the civil services examination, there are few things that we need to keep in mind, need to understand. Let's focus on them. And for that, we need to understand air defense system. How does this air defense system work? What is the role of S-400 defense system? And how is it related to a law which was passed by the US Congress, TATSA, way back in 2016? Let's try and understand this. For example, air defense system. There can be fighter jets coming from the enemy. There can be missiles. There can be drones. There can be unmanned aerial vehicles. Now, how do we attack them and thwart them? For that, we need the air defense system. This air defense system can be in the form of satellites. This air defense system can also be in the form of radars. Let's focus on radars. For example, we have radars installed at important locations to thwart the enemies. Now, what these radars will do, these radars will have transmitters. And what these transmitters will do, these transmitters will emit electromagnetic radio waves. And what these electromagnetic waves will do, when these radars, through their transmitters, they will emit these electromagnetic waves, they will touch or clash with the enemy. And this enemy can be a fighter jet, it can be a drone, it can be another unmanned aerial vehicle, it can be a missile as well. Then, once these electromagnetic radio waves will touch these foreign entities, these electromagnetic waves will be received back by the receiver of this radar. And through this, what we will get to know is whether indeed it is an enemy property, what is the speed with which this entity is coming, what is the direction of this entity, and what is going to be the possible target of this entity. So basically, what we need, these radar systems, it can be ground based, it can be ship based, it can be airborne radars as well. What they will do, they will scan the objects which are coming in the sky, whether it is a fighter jet, whether it is an UAV, whether it is a missile, and then these foreign entities will be scanned. Check whether these are enemy properties or not. Then what will happen? A message will be received by the air defense system, now pointing out that indeed it is a foreign aircraft or a foreign missile, and then appropriate response will be given. Appropriate response in the form of, we can also send our fighter jets. What if the incoming object is a fighter jet? For example, Pakistan has F-16. And what we have MiG-21 from Russia. We also have the Sols, Rafale from France. United States has F-16, which they have gifted and sold to Pakistan. So if it is a fighter jet from Pakistan, F-16, we can also send our Sukhoi MiG-21 or Rafale, and then they will resort to something called dogfight. Try and ensure that we engage with this enemy fighter jet so that the weapons or ammunition or missiles are not dropped on important sensitive locations in India. But this is also risky. Risky in the sense that our fighter jet may get destroyed. Pilot is also in a risky situation. For example, we saw when Operation Balakot was launched in 2019, our wing commander, Mr. Abhinandan, he ejected from the fighter jet and he was caught by the Pakistani enemy. That led to de-escalation because then Pakistan decided to hand over Captain Abhinandan, wing commander, to us, and then ultimately de-escalation took place. But this can be risky. This dogfight between two fighter jets of two different countries can be risky as well. The other alternative is surface to air missile system. For example, what we have, S-400 Triumph system, which is given to us, which we have purchased from Russia. These are considered to be one of the best in the world, heaviest, and we can mount these defense systems from the ships as well. So, what this surface to air missile system, for example, S-400, will do, it will also repel these foreign objects, whether it is missile, whether it is drone, whether it is UAV, by targeting these foreign objects and ultimately repulse them and destroy them. And we have the best S-400 defense system currently in operation. And that is what we have used apart from Akash, which is our indigenous system. These are the things that you have to keep in mind. But at the same time, S400 Triumph system, which was considered to be the best in the world, Israel also has something of a similar kind known as the Iron Dome. That's when Hamas launched missile strikes against Israel. The defense system of Israel, this Iron Dome, repulsed those missiles and that attack. So, cornerstone of our defense mechanism are these surface to air missile systems such as S 400. But who is the manufacturer of this? Russia. What happened in 2016? United States Congress passed a law called CAATSA. CAATSA stands for Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act. Who are the adversaries of United States? One is Russia, the other is North Korea, and the other is Iran. According to this CAATSA law, if there are countries which interact or transact with these adversaries of United States and they conduct significant transactions with these countries, then sanctions will be imposed upon those countries by the US president. Long story short, America has passed a law in 2016 which empowers the US president that if there are countries which are conducting transactions of significant nature with our adversaries, such as Russia, North Korea, Iran, we will impose sanctions against those countries. And since one of the adversary is Russia, and Russia is the manufacturer of these S-400 defense systems, we could also have gotten under these sanctions by the United States because we have purchased S-400 defense system from Russia, and we are in the process of getting more such systems from Russia. This is where it becomes important for your exam. Why? Because we were exempted from these sanctions. In 2021-22, an Indian American congressman, Mr. Ro Khanna, he introduced a bill in the House of Representatives in US Congress calling for the President of the United States to exempt India from these sanctions. And we got the exemption as well. That means even if we have purchased these S-400 defense system from Russia, sanctions were not imposed upon us by the US President. Which means in your syllabus, if you have a topic called diaspora, what is the role played by the Indian diaspora in our strategic maneuvers? This is where you can cite this example because this bill, which called for exemption for India under these sanctions, it was introduced in the US House of Representatives by an Indian American, Mr. Ro Khanna. That becomes another important thing. So what you need to understand is air defense system, S-400, CAATSA, and how is it related to the syllabus of the civil services examination. But at the same time, Pakistan would also have its air defense system. And what the defense ministry has said that we have neutralized the air defense system of Pakistan at Lahore. And that is what we call suppressing enemies' air defense system. SEED. And this can be done through ground based attack. This can be done through airborne missiles. This can be done by fighter jets dropping missiles on the air defense system of an enemy country and neutralize it. And we have, according to the defense ministry, successfully neutralized the air defense system of Pakistan at Lahore. That is what you have to keep in mind. Let's look at the editorial, finding support. When Pahalgam attack took place, we took some time to decide what should be the best response to this terrorist act, and then we launched Operation Sindoor. How did the world react to this Operation Sindoor? All the important countries of the world, although they expressed their concern at the escalating matters between two nuclear armed countries, Pakistan and India, but majority of them did not condemn India's Operation Sindoor, which primarily tells us that this attack, this counter attack by India, this retaliation by India, the world community thought that it was on expected lines. And at the same time, this is also justified because India is responding to the terror threat emanating from Pakistan. But at the same time, we can also say that the world has given approval on Operation Sindoor because we did not escalate the matter by attacking the military installations of Pakistan. We carefully selected those targets which were the terror launchpads, for example, Murid Cave, for example, Bahawalpur, for example, the headquarters of Hizbul Mujahideen. We deliberately and consciously chose not to attack the military targets of Pakistan, although we could, because we did not want to escalate the matters, because we wanted to target only the terror camps, their terror infrastructure. So we did not want to escalate matters with the Pakistani army. This, the world community has got an indication, and through that, we got the global acceptance on Operation Sindoor. But at the same time, this is also because after Pahalgam attack, Prime Minister Modi, the External Affairs Minister, the National Security Advisor, Mr. Ajit Doval, spoke to various other countries and briefed them, spoke to various members of the United Nations Security Council and briefed them about this terror attack emanating from Pakistan. So diplomatic outreach was also started by India immediately after the Pahalgam attack. And then the precision with which the military strikes took place, not targeting the military installation of Pakistan, this has been our response. At the same time, something that I was telling you yesterday, in a symbolic gesture, because the enemy in Pahalgam attack did not only want to inculcate fear amongst the minds of the Indians, but also wanted to divide and polarize the country on religious lines. That is why the Hindu editorial says that when the press conference was conducted, carried out by the Ministry of External Affairs, by the Foreign Secretary, as a symbolic gesture, two women were chosen belonging to two different faiths. This is to give a signal that we are a modern, inclusive, and at the same time a resolute nation which is confident about its approach. But at the same time, United States Vice President recently has given a speech saying, although there is an escalation of matters between India and Pakistan, but this is not a war that we would like to get involved in. So United States is like, hands off. We are not going to interfere. Similarly, countries like UK, Russia, they have also tried to reach out and mediate between India and Pakistan so as to de-escalate the matter. But significantly, the foreign ministers of two countries, Saudi Arabia and Iran, they are on an unannounced visit to India, maybe trying to mediate between India and Pakistan so as to de escalate the matter. Pakistan has been isolated, and Pakistan has been diplomatically isolated right after 26/11 attacks. But even then, Pakistan has some friends. For example, China, which is considered to be the all weather friend of Pakistan, Malaysia, Turkey, and Turkey also has sent, according to various reports, arms and ammunition to Pakistan. The missiles have been sent by Turkey. And they have been asking for an independent investigation. The Hindu editorial says we have to do now something else as well, something extra as well. And what is that something extra? We need to share credible evidence of these Pakistan sponsored attacks, specifically the Pahalgam attack, with the United Nations so that we can increasingly put pressure on Pakistan. Because Pakistan is asking for proof. Although we gave them proof after 26/11, we gave them proof after Udi, we gave them proof after the Pulwama attack. Even then, Pakistan is not accepting it and still carrying out its war, which is leading India through thousand cuts, what is known as the proxy war. But what the Hindu editorial says, we need to further engage with the international community, give them credible evidence of the Pakistani sponsored and trained attack so that we can be viewed as a responsible counter terrorism country. We are not escalating matters, but we are only responding to the terrorism coming from the other side. And we also need to be very careful of getting hyphenated with Pakistan again. And what is that hyphenation or dehyphenation that we talk about? For a long period of time, right after the independence of our country, when the nation was split into India and Pakistan, we were always viewed by the international community as one, India Pakistan. So whenever foreign countries and their heads would come to India, they would visit Pakistan as well. Whenever foreign countries would speak about India, they would speak about Pakistan as well. So it is as if we were always considered to be related to Pakistan, India, Pakistan. In fact, when Barack Obama became the president of the United States, he tried to send an envoy, a special envoy to India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Richard Holbrooke. But then we put diplomatic pressure on the Obama administration, and then Richard Holbrooke was appointed as an envoy only for Afghanistan and Pakistan, not on Kashmir. So we need to further consolidate our position, and we want to be de-hyphenated from Pakistan, because now whenever foreign visitors come to India, foreign heads come to India, they visit India, they don't visit Pakistan. They consider India as an independent, aspirational country, a country which has its own strength, one of the biggest markets of the world. So we are not viewed closer to Pakistan, viewed similarly to Pakistan, or in consonance with Pakistan. So that dehyphenation, which we have successfully employed for 2 decades now, this should not further get entangled, and this internationalization of Kashmir issue should come to an end. That is why always we have thwarted any attempts of a third party mediation or internationalization of our issues. We always consider that whatever issue we have with Pakistan is a bilateral issue. And that is something which was reiterated by the Shimla Agreement as well. Shimla Agreement, which was signed after the 1971 India-Pakistan War. There were two objectives of Shimla Agreement. One, these 93,000 prisoners of war, which we had taken prisoners. These were the army men of Pakistan. We had to return them. And at the same time, all the outstanding issues between India and Pakistan would have to be resolved bilaterally. We do not recognize, accept any third party intervention or internationalization of our issues with Pakistan. That is what this editorial says. We need to be careful about. Let's look at the third article on page number 1. There is a war, although an undeclared one, but at the same time, there is a misinformation campaign or disinformation campaign. War is not always fought on the battlefront or in the skies or in the waters, but war is always also fought psychologically as well. This is where cyber attacks are part of it. And we have seen repeated attempts from the hackers from Pakistan to hack into Indian websites, defense ministry, and other websites. So, cyber attacks are also part of the modern warfare. And at the same time, this misinformation and disinformation campaign. For example, the OTT platforms, which can stream Pakistani content. For example, the YouTube channels, which can air Pakistani propaganda. For example, Pakistan may launch a propaganda which it is trying to do that we have shot down 5 airplanes, fighter jets of India, that we have successfully attacked this installation or that installation, that India is retaliating and attacking the children and women in Pakistan. So, this psychological warfare, this disinformation, misinformation campaign can be launched by Pakistan to our disadvantage. And that is why we have Information Technology Act of the year 2000, under which we have rules which were passed in 2021. Under these rules, we have a code of ethics. Code of ethics which publishers have to follow, which OTT platforms will have to follow, which social media intermediaries have to follow, such as YouTube, such as Meta, such as other entities. And what is the code of ethics that they have to follow? This publisher will have to take into account various factors while deciding to feature or transmit or publish any song, any movie, any play, any content, any podcast. If the content affects the sovereignty and integrity of India, if this content threatens, endangers the security of India, if it is against the friendly relations with foreign states, or if this content has the potential to incite violence or to disturb the law and order, public order in India. And using this code of ethics, using these IT rules of 2021, The government, the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology has urged these OTT platforms to stop airing content from Pakistan, whether it is the YouTube channel, whether these are the podcasts, whether these are the OTT platforms which are streaming the serials or the soaps or the content coming from Pakistan, because that may be used for various misinformation and disinformation campaigns. That's article number 3. Article number 4, Rohingyas, predominantly Muslim, although Rohingyas can be Hindus as well. Where are they from? Myanmar, what was previously known as Burma. And there is an ethnic violence being carried out in Myanmar by the military junta in Myanmar, because we also saw how a democratically elected government led by the party belonging to Nobel Peace Laureate Aung San Suu Kyi, it was dismissed by the military junta in Myanmar. And even before that, there were ethnic clashes between Rohingyas and the Buddhist population in Myanmar. And then what these Rohingyas did, they started migrating. They started migrating to neighboring countries. And according to the government figures, more than 40,000 Rohingyas have entered India as well. Some of these Rohingyas are in Bangladesh as well. Most of them are in Bangladesh, but some of them have migrated to India as well. The world community may view them as refugees. And there is a convention for that, United Nations Convention relating to the status of refugees of 1951. And then there was an additional protocol of this convention in 1967. What is the difference between the two? When the World War II broke out, it also led to displacement of people. It also led to the refugee crisis in Europe, because Europe was the center, the theater of the Second World War. How do we protect these refugees? How do we give them legal safeguard? What is the responsibility of the nations with regard to these refugees? For that, a convention was signed and adopted by the United Nations called Refugee Convention, or United Nations Convention relating to the status of refugees, 1951. But there was a limitation. Limitation was it only dealt with those refugees who have been deviated before 1st January 1951. So only those refugees which have got dismembered, snatched because of the disturbances in the Europe prior to 1st January 1951, this convention focused upon only those refugees and only those refugees which are in Europe. So there was a time limit, there was a space constraint. That means it is limited to the refugee crisis prior to 1st Jan 1951, and it will only deal with those refugees who are in Europe, who have been displaced from Europe. And then some safeguards were provided to them. That means these refugees should not be deported back to those countries where their life is in danger. And that is what we call a very important principle under this refugee convention, known as the principle of non refoulement. And what is this principle of non refoulement? If, for example, there is a Rohingya belonging to Myanmar and he has entered into, let's say, a country X, and X is a signatory to this United Nations Convention. Now, X cannot deport Rohingyas back to Myanmar because in Myanmar, their life is in danger, their dignity is in danger. That is what we call principle of non-refoulement. That means a legal framework was provided to these refugees that when you enter a country which is a signatory to this UN convention, this country cannot deport you back to your country where your life, your dignity would be in danger. But then the United Nations thought that why restrict the time limit and geography of this convention? Why restrict it to prior to 1st Jan 1951 and restrict it to Europe? Why not extend it? Refugees after this date as well, and refugees belonging anywhere to any part of this world. And that is why the additional protocol of 1967 comes into the picture. If 1951 convention talks about European refugees prior to 1st Jan, this protocol of 1967 talks about refugees anywhere in the world, even after 1st Jan 1950. But India has not signed or ratified this convention. India has not ratified this convention. And there are multiple reasons why we have not ratified this convention. Reason: it may affect the sovereignty and security of India. What if these refugees, if they come to India, they start endangering our sovereignty and security and integrity? So we should decide it rather than an international organization, rather than an international convention, whether we should accept these refugees or not. Second, the government of India then said the definition of refugee is very narrow. You are only talking about the European refugees, and that too prior to 1st Jan 1951. How are we connected with Europe? We are not going to ratify this treaty. Although 1967 protocol later on expanded the definition and time period of refugee, but even then we have not ratified it. Why? Because it may affect our security, and it may also risk demographic imbalance. What if these refugees, they enter sensitive northeastern states where we have a different, unique, different culture? So it has the risk of demographic imbalance as well. And at the same time, according to this convention, the burden of supporting these refugees is on these nations where these refugees enter. These countries may also be poorer countries who may be struggling for providing life, dignity, livelihood, food, shelter to their own population. There should have been the responsibility, the onus on the developed countries, the rich countries. They should have shared the burden, the financial burden of supporting these refugees, which they did not. That's why we did not ratify it. And even in absence of this convention, which we have not ratified, even then we have provided refugee to the Tibetans, the Chakmas, the Sri Lankan Tamils. We provided refugee status to those people coming from East Pakistan when the 1971 war broke out, despite the fact that we were poor at that time. So, even in absence, on humanitarian grounds, from case to case basis, we have been providing shelter to refugees. There was a petition filed in the Supreme Court because the government of India considered that we are going to deport these Rohingyas back to Myanmar because they can be our threat to our sovereignty, security, and peace. Petition was filed in the Supreme Court urging the Supreme Court that you should stop the central government from deporting these Rohingyas back to Myanmar. But now the Supreme Court is going to hear this case fully in detail in July. But in a preliminary case, as a preliminary observation, the Supreme Court has said this is the sole prerogative of the central government. If the central government feels that these Rohingyas are foreign, they are threat to our security, it is the solemn right, absolute right of the central government to deport them. We will not interfere. So, from this article, what you need to understand is this UN Convention on the Status of Refugee 1951, the Additional Protocol of 1967, this principle of non refoulement, and the reasons why India has not ratified this UN Convention relating to the status of refugees. Clear? Done. Let's look at another editorial: caution and optimism, something that we discussed yesterday as well. India is in talks with various countries such as Chile, such as Peru, such as United States, such as European Union to conduct, to carry out, to sign a free trade agreement. And we have signed a free trade agreement with United Kingdom. What is this editorial talking about? This editorial says that because of this free trade agreement, there are some positives for India. Positives such as 99% of Indian exports to UK will face no import duties at all. But 99%, why not 100%? Because I've told you yesterday that free trade agreement is not always completely free because there are exceptions, because there are quotas, because there are exceptions. But 99% of Indian exports to UK is going to attract no import duty, which is going to help our textile industry, which is going to give boost to our various manufacturing sectors such as textile, automobile exports, minerals, so on and so forth. So that is the positive for India. Engineering exports will also grow. And according to various reports, it is going to nearly double to $7.55 billion by 2029 2030. So our engineering exports will also grow. That is going to be a boost for our IT sector as well. Our manufacturing sector will also get boosted because our apparels, our textiles, our automobiles, they will attract almost zero import duty in UK, which will facilitate exports, which will further strengthen our manufacturing sector. Trade volume is also expected to go up. The bilateral trade between India and UK, it is projected to double to $120 billion in the next 5 years. So that is the positive for India. And I told you yesterday as well that when Indian employee is going on a short visit to UK to work there was a burden that the employer as well as this employee will have to contribute to the social security funds. It was becoming very difficult and expensive for these employers in UK to attract talent from India because they had to contribute to the social security funds. Now, for 3 years, these Indian employees who are going on a short visit to UK, on a short term project to UK, they will not have to, and their employer will not have to contribute to social security funds, which is going to further attract talent to the United Kingdom. At the same time, foreign direct investment from UK will also increase. These are the positives related to this India UK free trade agreement. But then there are some risks as well. Risk in the sense we will have to cut tariffs on close to 90% of the goods imported from UK. For example, 85% of these over the next 10 years, we have to reduce it to zero. That means it's not that every import from UK will be import duty free, 0% tariff. But we will have to reduce tariffs to zero for 85% of the exports coming from UK to India in the next 10 years, which is going to affect our alco beverage industry. Although it is going to be a win-win situation for a consumer, but it is going to affect our alco beverage industry because we will be importing whiskey, gin from UK, which will attract less tariffs, 75% now, in contrast to 150% tariff that we used to impose till now. Further, what about our farmers who are more vulnerable because we have been always talking about doubling the farmers' income? If we are going to import lamb, salmon, and various other dairy products from UK, it is going to affect our farmer as well because then these products will compete with our domestic products and ultimately our domestic products may be cannibalized. So that is the risk, that is the concession. And at the same time, it will have an impact because, as I told you, we are dealing and we are holding talks with various other countries for FTA, for example, Chile, Peru, US, European Union. This might become a template that we will have to follow in FTA with US and EU as well. UK is a smaller trading partner for India, but US and EU, these are bigger trading partners for India. And if the same template is applied for EU and US as well, it is going to be a lose lose situation for India. Because look at the past. For example, Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement that we signed with UAE in 2022. Because of that, the trade deficit has worsened between India and UAE. We have started importing more from UAE than we have exported. Similarly, the FTA that we signed with Australia, it has not also benefited us massively. And if this India UK free trade agreement is going to be the template that we are following, we are going to follow for EU and uh, United States as well, it is going to put an additional strain on Indian manufacturers. And if we want a Viksit Bharat, a developed Bharat by 2047, we have to protect our domestic industry, we have to protect our farmers, we have to protect our manufacturers. Because our experience, past experience with such FTAs has not resulted in a much beneficial situation for us. Currently, Indian manufacturing contributes under 2% to global exports. And that is why the policymakers in India, whenever they negotiate free trade agreements with EU or US, they have to keep this in mind that we need to protect and support our domestic industry. That is what this editorial talks about: caution and optimism. The FTA with the United Kingdom should not elbow out Indian farmers because they are more clear. Great. Now let's look at another article. BJP MP's ludicrous remarks are not worth contempt action, says the Supreme Court. We have Article 19, Clause 1, Clause A, which talks about freedom of speech and expression. And since I was talking about Article 19, I missed out one point which I suddenly realized. The Supreme Court said in the Rohingya case that if Article 14 and Article 21 applies to everybody, because Article 14, which talks about right to equality, because these Rohingyas may claim, why are you discriminating against us? You are not deporting other refugees, but you are deporting us. So you are violating the equality clause under Article 14. And we have right to life and dignity as well, which you will be violating if you deport us to Myanmar. Gujarat High Court, Delhi High Court previously has said that inherent under Article 21 is the principle of non-refoulement. So even if India is not a signatory to United Nations Convention on the Status of Refugees, even then, since Article 21 talks about right to life, we still will have to follow the principle of non-refoulement. But the Supreme Court has said even if Article 14 applies to everybody, Article 21 applies to everybody, but Article 19(1)(e), which is the fundamental right to reside and settle anywhere within the territory of India, this is available only to the citizens. And if these Rohingyas are foreigners, the government, the central government has the right, has the authority, ultimate authority and power to deport them. That's what I realized when I was talking about Article 19(1)(a) of the Constitution, which talks about free speech, but it is not an absolute fundamental. Your freedom of speech and expression can be restricted under Article 19, Clause 2, on the grounds of eight grounds are mentioned on the reasonable restrictions. And one such ground is contempt of court. But keep in mind, this phrase contempt of court is not defined in the Constitution. This contempt of court can be either civil contempt or it can be criminal contempt. In fact, this is a question that was once asked in your prelims examination. This has been defined by the law passed by the Parliament in 1971 called Contempt of Courts Act 1971. So, although your free speech can be restricted on the grounds of contempt of court, but Constitution has not defined what is contempt of court. It is the Contempt of Courts Act 1971 which classifies contempt into civil contempt and criminal contempt. What is a civil contempt? For example, I had a hearing before the court, and the court said that on the next date of hearing, which is 10 days from now, let's say on the 1st of June, you have to appear before us again. Or the court gave me a directive that you hand over these documents to someone else. This is a directive. What if I deliberately, willfully disobey the court order? This is civil contempt. That means if I have given an undertaking to the court that I will pay this person 100 crores, which I owed him, and even then I'm not paying, I'm disobeying the court order, this is civil contempt. Deliberately, willfully disobeying the court order or violating the undertaking that you have given to the court, that is civil contempt. And the courts normally take a lighter view of the civil contempt. Maybe you'll be reprimanded, but then you will have to abide by the court order. Because abiding by the court order is not an exception, it's the rule that you have to follow. But criminal contempt is something which is taken very seriously by the court. What is this criminal contempt? If you scandalize the judge or the judgment, for example, can we criticize the Supreme Court judgment which it gave when it imposed a time limit on the governor or the president to act when a bill is passed by the state legislative assembly, you can criticize it. Fair criticism is not contempt. Can you criticize the Supreme Court judgment when it gave in case, let's say, related to the AMU case or the Ayodhya case or the Rafael case? We can criticize. But if you scandalize the court, how? That this judge has given this verdict because the judge is an upper caste, or the judge has taken money from Ambani, or the judge is prejudiced, or the judge is doing this. You are scandalizing the court. And what you are doing, you are sowing the seeds of distrust, mistrust in the minds of the people. Because we say Supreme Court is final, not because it is right. Supreme Court is right because it is final, because it's the final court of appeal, because it is the most important institution in a democracy. And if you start scandalizing the court, people's trust in the judiciary will be eroded. That is why, although you have a free speech, but you can't resort to contempt of court. And for that, this law of 1971 prescribes some punishment. Punishment can be for 6 months. For example, a former judge of the Calcutta High Court, Mr. Karnan, he was also sent to 6 months imprisonment because of the contempt of court. Prashant Bhushan was convicted for contempt, although a 1 rupee fine was imposed on him, not 6 months. But be that as it may, what you need to understand for the civil services examination is how to approach and file a criminal contempt case in the court. This case can be filed in three ways. Way number one, if the court acts suo motu on its own, the Supreme Court or the High Court, because listen to me carefully, only Supreme Court and the High Courts have the power to punish people for contempt. District courts do not have this power. But that doesn't mean that you can commit contempt of a district court. If you commit contempt of the district court, then the concerned High Court will punish you for committing contempt of the district court, but district court themselves cannot punish you for contempt. Only High Courts and Supreme Court has the power to punish you for contempt. And how can the courts punish somebody if they are acting on their own? So moto. On its own, the Supreme Court is hearing this matter that you have committed contempt. On its own, the High Court is hearing this matter that you have committed contempt. This is one way. Second is, if the Attorney General for India or the Solicitor General for India or the Advocate General of a state approach the court, Advocate General will approach the Supreme Court, will approach the High Court. Attorney General for India, the Solicitor General for India will approach the Supreme Court that this particular individual has committed contempt, punish him or punish her. This is second way. Third is, any third person. Third person means neither the court acting on its own nor the Attorney General or the Solicitor General approaching the court. Any third person wants to approach the court that punish Nishikant Dubey for contempt. But you cannot file this case without the written approval of the Attorney General or the Solicitor General. For example, Ms. Swara Bhaskar, Mr. Rajdeep Sardesai had previously given some statements, and somebody approached the Supreme Court that please punish Rajdeep Sardesai and Swara Bhaskar for contempt. The court said first get the approval of the Attorney General, and at that time, Mr. K.K. Venugopal was the Attorney General. And K.K. Venugopal said, no, this is a fair criticism that does not amount to contempt, so I will not give you the approval. You cannot go to the court for punishing Rajdeep and Swara Bhaskar. This mechanism is provided to save the time of the court. So there are three ways in which this contempt proceedings can be initiated. One, if the court is acting suo motu on its own. Second, if the Attorney General or the Solicitor General is approaching the court. Or third, any third person can approach with the written approval of the Solicitor or the Attorney General. What Nishikant Dubey had done, he had said that the Chief Justice of India is responsible for the civil wars in the country. The Supreme Court is going beyond its limits. So it was criticism of the government. It was criticism of the Supreme Court. It was the criticism of the Chief Justice. saying Chief Justice is responsible for all the civil wars in India, although there is no civil war in India. Petition was filed in the court that you should take action against the MP belonging to the BJP. But thankfully, what Supreme Court has done, Supreme Court has said, although this is irresponsible, foolish, ludicrous statement given by the MP, but that does not warrant contempt proceedings. We are not as fragile as the flowers to wither and wilt under such ludicrous statements. We do not believe that if such statements are given by these people, it will affect the credibility of the courts or the confidence of the people in the credibility of the courts. So we are not like flowers who will wither or wilt under these statements. That is why, although the statement was given, court has said, because there is a desire and the deliberate attempt to sow the seeds of mistrust amongst the people against the judiciary. Even then, we will not proceed with the contempt proceedings against this irresponsible MP. That's what we need to understand from this topic. And let's look at the practice question on your screen. The law of contempt is essential to uphold the authority of courts, but its broad scope may clash with the right to freedom of speech. Critically examine the relevance of the Contempt of Courts Act 1971 in contemporary India in light of recent judicial pronouncements and suggestions for reform. Write this answer in 250 words. Okay? Any questions? Done. Let's look at the last article for today. Chief Justice of India forwards panel's inquiry report on Justice Varma to President and the Prime Minister. What is this case all about? A judge of the Delhi High Court, Justice Yashwant Verma, from his house, or what he says, the outpost to his house, burnt, half burnt currency notes were recovered. Then investigation took place. The Chief Justice of the Delhi High Court, referred this matter to the Chief Justice of India, saying that there is a need for conducting a thorough probe. Then, according to the Supreme Court, there is an in house procedure that we follow. A three-member committee was created, set up by the Chief Justice of India to further probe into these allegations. And this in house committee has submitted a report. And according to this report has conclusively proven that yes, Justice Verma is guilty. The Chief Justice has asked Justice Verma, please resign. But Justice Verma has refused to resign. When he has refused to resign, now, according to Additional District and Sessions Judge versus Registrar General High Court of Madhya Pradesh in 2014, it is incumbent upon the Chief Justice to send this matter to the President and the Prime Minister of India, because now the ball is set to be in the court of the Parliament. Now, Parliament may pass a resolution asking the President to remove the judge because the judge has refused to resign. What do you need to know from this topic? Constitution of India has various provisions to ensure and enforce the independence of judiciary. How do we ensure independence of judiciary? Various provisions are there in the Constitution. Provisions such as the judge of the Supreme Court and High Court, they do not hold office during the pleasure of the President. So there is no such concept as doctrine of pleasure for a judge. There is a well-defined retirement age for a judge. The retirement age for a judge is 65 if you are a Supreme Court judge, 62 if you are a judge of a high court. So these judges, they do not hold office during the pleasure of the President. That means they have a well defined, secure job to ensure independence, to ensure they do not succumb to the pressures of the political executive. Second, the court has the power to punish people for contempt. This is the power given to the judge, to the judiciary. Third, removal process. It is not that the president can remove judges at her own whims and the fancies. There is a well defined removal process in the Constitution. Such is the difficult process that till date no judge of the Supreme Court or High Court has ever been removed. That means unless and until Parliament pass a resolution, that too by special majority, the judge cannot be removed by the president. This is to ensure independence of judiciary. There is another mechanism to ensure independence of judiciary, that your salary, including your pensions, they are charged on Consolidated Fund of India. When they are charged on the Consolidated Fund of India, that means they are not subject to the vote of the parliament. This is to ensure independence of judiciary. And at the same time, Article 121, which says that the conduct of the judges cannot be discussed in the parliament unless and until you want to remove a judge. So if you want to remove Justice Varma, yes, you have to discuss the conduct of this judge on the basis of which you are removing him on the grounds of misbehavior or incapacity. Otherwise, you cannot discuss the conduct of judges. This the Constitution thought that we will ensure independence of judiciary. Dr. Ambedkar said the most important office under the Constitution is that of the Comptroller and the Auditor General of India, CAG. And the next most important office is the judge. But even if it is a very important office, we have to provide independence. But even if it has to be independent, we cannot ensure and violate the doctrine of checks and balances. And how do we ensure checks and balances? Through appointment and removal. The judges will be appointed by the president. The judges will be removed by the president only on the basis of the recommendations of the parliament, both houses of the Indian parliament, that too by a resolution passed by special majority. And what form of special majority? Majority of the two-thirds of the members present and voting, plus majority of the total membership of the house. This was to ensure separation of powers, checks and balances. And that is how Constitution thought that we can keep a check on judiciary. Appointment process has been arrogated by the Supreme Court to itself because of the emergence of the collegium system after the judgment of 1993, reiterated in 1998, further reiterated in 2015, known as the second judges, third judges, and fourth judges case. The appointment process is such that till date, we can say that in India, judges are appointed by themselves through collegium system. And removal is such a difficult process that till date, no judge has been removed. But the process has been provided, not by the Constitution. This again was once asked in your prelims examination. The process of removal of a judge is not provided in the Constitution, although the grounds are mentioned. This entire process is mentioned in a law passed by the Parliament called Judges Inquiry Act of 1968. And this is something that you need to know. Because if Justice Varma has refused to resign, the matter has been communicated by the CJI to Prime Minister and the President. Now, what will happen is Judges Inquiry Act will come into play, under which what will happen? This process may be initiated in either Lok Sabha or the Rajya Sabha. Members will have to write to the chairperson of the Rajya Sabha or to the Speaker of the Lok Sabha that we have to remove a particular judge. And then the presiding officer will have to set up a committee. This committee will have three members. One will be the Chief Justice of India, or a senior judge nominated by the Chief Justice. One will be the Chief Justice of a High Court, and the other has to be a distinguished jurist. And they will submit a report. If they submit a report that this judge should not be removed because we have not been able to prove misbehavior and incapacity, then the judge can't be removed. But if this committee says, yes, it has been proven that there is a classic example of misbehavior or incapacity, then Parliament will have to vote. For example, Justice Ramaswamy in 1991, who was the judge of the Supreme Court. Allegation against him was that when he was the Chief Justice of the Punjab and Haryana High Court, he had siphoned off the money. He had used the public money to refurbish, renovate his private residence. This select committee was set up. This committee was set up to investigate allegations against the judge. The distinguished jurist in that case was Fali S. Nariman. Even then, when this committee proved conclusively that yes, the charges against this judge are correct, even then the judge could not be removed because the Congress party abstained from the voting. Because even after this committee says, okay, remove, even if the CJI says remove, but it is ultimately the ball is in the court of the parliament. Parliament may or may not pass this resolution. And without that resolution, the president cannot. And for your prelims examination, you need to understand that that resolution which is passed by the parliament falls under a category called statutory resolution. The last example that we saw was that of Chief Justice of India, Justice Deepak Misra. In 2017, more than 50 MPs of Rajya Sabha wrote to the chairperson of the Rajya Sabha, Mr. M. Venkaiah Naidu, who was then the Vice President of India, saying that we should remove the Chief Justice of India. This was the first time when a removal motion was to be introduced against a sitting Chief Justice of India. But this chairperson of the Rajya Sabha, Venkaiah Naidu, dismissed this petition, dismissed this motion, saying, no, we will not initiate. This was again a question asked in your prelims examination because when you approach the Rajya Sabha chairman or when you approach the Speaker of the Lok Sabha, it is the discretion of the presiding officer whether to accept, whether to admit or refuse to admit this motion. That is the discretion of the Speaker. That's the discretion of the chairperson. And that is how this question is there right on your screen as practice question. Discuss the procedure for the removal of a judge of the High Court in India. Critically examine the adequacy of this process in ensuring judicial accountability without compromising judicial independence. These were the topics that we had to discuss today in our daily newspaper analysis. If you have watched and got benefited from this, do not forget to press the like button and let's pray for the Jawans. Let's pray for every single Indian. Let's pray for those who are along the line of control, along the international border. Let's pray for the peace, security, safety, stability of our country. Thank you for watching. Jai Hind.